Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. So excited to be here with Blueprint and invite you in. This is going to be a great workshop. We're going to have lots to talk about, some active time to workshop things. Um, but as we welcome folks in, I would love to get a sense of who you are. If you don't mind just introducing yourself in the chat with this prompt, fill in the blank. I'm a therapist who blank. Would love to get a sense of who's in the room and how you think about describing yourself.
Thank you, Ryan. We got 50 or so folks in the room, and the numbers are rising quickly. So, going to give folks a few minutes.
Annalie, a therapist who has a group practice specializing with children and families. Such important work. Thanks for being here. Hi, Michelle. Welcome. Thanks for asking that in the chat. Please introduce yourself. That's the question right now. Using the prompt you see on the screen, I'm a therapist who blank. Fill in the blank. I'm curious to see who's in the room and how you think about the ways you describe yourself. Welcome, welcome. Brian is mental health coach and marriage mentor. And Jenny working with trauma in Denver. Um, Emily, a therapist who is non-judgmental, creative, and direct. Chip, Nicole, welcome. We give folks just like 1 or 2 more minutes to come in, but feel free, introduce yourself, say hi to folks. It sounds like we've got a really great set of skills in the room, and I'm really excited to talk about how we take those skills and we message them towards the potential clients we're trying to reach. Robin, a therapist who loves what I do and loves seeing my clients succeed, a geeky therapist who's found authenticity helps with connection. Isn't that the truth? Great. Welcome, everybody. Well, Mason, should we go ahead and get rolling into things? Thanks for introducing yourself, everybody. Mason, would you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks, Ryan. As Ryan suggested, I'm Mason. I'm the community manager at Blueprint. And as many of you likely know, Blueprint provides an AI assistant for therapists to automate documentation and provide clinical insights before and after every session. We're also building an AI assisted EHR that's set to launch early next year. And you can learn more about what we're building and why we're so excited about it on our website. I'll drop the link in the chat in just a minute. As for today, I'm super excited about the content that Ryan has to share with you. This event is one of a series of educational webinars we're providing as part of our digital community for mental health professionals. The community is called Between Sessions and is a trusted, intimate space for therapists to connect, share insights, and support each other in what can often be challenging and isolating work. So if you're interested in accessing more sessions like this, or joining a free case consultation group, or simply connecting with peers across the country doing similar work, we'd love for you to join us in the community. I'll also add a link in the chat for that as well, where you can learn more and sign up if you aren't a member already. The webinar, of course, will be recorded and made available to anyone in the community. So now I couldn't be more excited to welcome you all and Ryan to a discussion that I think you'll find to be both practical and thought-provoking. I'm going to hand it over to Ryan now, who's the CEO and founder of our partner Mental Health Match, who will take it away for the next hour and share with you everything you need to know about crafting an online therapist profile that works. Go ahead, Ryan.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mason, and thanks for all the work you do with community and bringing people together and making practices just run better and easier. Um, I'm really excited to be here. So, I am the founder of Mental Health Match. We've been around for about 6 years now, and over this time, have helped hundreds of thousands of people connect with a therapist. And all along that way, we have learned a whole lot. And before I actually went into this line of work, my background was in messaging and communications. And so I brought a lot of those skills into our time at Mental Health Match and really helping therapists put their best foot forward and crafting their profiles to really resonate with folks. A few years ago, we did a really big study where we looked at profiles that perform really well in the sense that a majority of people who saw those profiles ended up contacting the therapist and wanting to work with them, and looked at profiles that didn't do so well, where like not a lot of people saw those profiles and wanted to work with them. And we analyzed the photos and we analyzed the messaging and we looked at the words that they use. And all of these things I'm going to share with you today. So, what we're about to go through is based off of this study and the real lessons that we have learned with tens of thousands of therapist profiles and hundreds of thousands of clients coming through. Um, Before I forget, I should mention that everybody in this community and on this webinar is invited to try Mental Health Match for free. It's a 60-day free trial. And if you decide to stay with us, you've got 20% off a month. For your first 6 months, just use the code Blueprint when you sign up. I encourage you to take a moment and screenshot this so you have it. I'll show it to you again at the end, and you can always ask me, Mason, for this code again. So that you can give Mental Health Match a try. One of the things that we really specialize in is the quality of the match and helping therapists really understand the client at the very first moment. So with us, you get a pretty detailed intake profile of each client about what they're looking for and their presenting issues, what they want out of therapy. And that way you can go reach out to them with a really personalized message that starts off strong and starts your relationship strong. So our agenda today, we're going to first start off with some real examples from Mental Health Match, and we're going to look at some that worked really well and some that did not work so well. And we'll kind of talk through them a little bit. And then we're going to take a few minutes and just ground ourselves in what being somebody who's looking for therapy is like, and something that we've learned a lot from the research that we've done with the people who use our site. And then we'll take some time and go through some lessons, things that we've learned in our study of profiles, things that we recommend, some do's and don'ts. And then we'll have some time to actually look at some templates, to do some active workshopping together, to run ideas by each other as a community, and then we'll wrap up. Um, this is going to be an active workshop. Throughout it, we'll be asking questions, we'll be inviting people to share. So I'd invite you, if you have a profile or even your website, pull that up now, have that in front of you so you can take a look, maybe open up a different document, a Word document, so you can play with some language. We really want this to be an active time so that you leave this hour with a profile that you are ready to use, language that you can then put on your profile, language you can put on your website, wherever else you're looking for communities. Also, I would say, please ask questions as we go along. There's no need to wait for the end. We have a Q&A feature here. So if you see there's like a Q&A button in your Zoom controls that actually puts questions right in front of me. We'll invite folks to share things as we go in the chat. But if you've got a specific question that you want to make sure I see, because the chat can kind of get going and fill up, put it in that Q&A feature. Mason, anything else about the Zoom controls or the kind of the agenda today that you want to share?
No, I think that's great. We got the chat, the Q&A, and I just pulled out my pen and my notebook to um, follow along in the workshop. So I'm ready. We're ready.
Wonderful. All right, well, let's get into some real examples of things that we've seen at Mental Health Match. So what I mentioned is when we did this study, we look at the number of people who view a profile after being shown it as a good match for them, and then what percent of those decide to contact a therapist to start working together. So the first example I want to share has a 66% conversion. I pulled some of the language that they use. That's 2 out of every 3 people who was shown this profile said, yep, I like what they've got to say and I want to work with them. So I specialize in working with people who feel overworked and unappreciated. My clients are the go-to people in their family, friend circle, and work. They've checked all the boxes of what they're supposed to do. Sorry, that was a typo, but they're questioning, who am I now and what makes me happy? Together, we'll discover and pursue your self-care and relationship needs and move from focusing less on what others think and more on what you need to be fulfilled. I'll help you look at the root issues of things so you can accelerate growth in many areas of your life. So I'm curious, as you see that, really great example of something that works. I'm curious, put in the chat, what do you notice about this one? Like, what's your gut reaction to it? What stands out about the language that they use? Why do you think it resonates so well? Shannon says it's warm, it's engaging, confident, down to earth, and relatable, short and to the point. All of these are definite assets of this language. Everyone feels unappreciated. Yeah, like it speaks to you, right? It's not clinically gobbledygook. It defines an ideal client. It is client focused and not therapist focused, and it is specific. It's about the person. Brian says the word together, which I love. It's a preview of something that's coming. Absolutely. It sounds personable, like there's voice in session. Yes. It's sharing how the client feels. So when you read it, you're like, yes, this is me, right? That's how I feel. All of these are absolutely reasons why this profile does really well. It is a very approachable, it is very relatable. It helps clients feel seen. It uses that word together. You can kind of almost imagine the voice of this therapist and what it might be like to work with them. Combined with a video, it gives you a really good impression of who this therapist is. It's focused on the outcome. Absolutely. This is great. Let's take a look at a profile that doesn't work so well. So this one has 0% conversion. It means nobody who looked at it said, I want to work with this therapist. I'm a compassionate listener who provides a safe space with an integrative approach. I incorporate mind body techniques to help clients gain confidence in the ability to navigate strong emotions that naturally arise in life and cultivate a direct path back to our authentic selves. This ultimately leads us to finding more balance, joy, and meaning in life. I aim to be a resource and guide for clients. I assist in the learning of their unique needs, a rediscovery of strengths, and identification of which supportive modalities work best. So, what do you notice about this one? Because this one also has some outcomes related. It focuses on some things that you can make possible. Um, Too much clinical jargon. Yeah, it's very technical. The word I, everything is about what I do. Yes, yes. Yeah, y'all are absolutely seeing the pattern. Buzzwords, jargon, it feels super distant. I have to think about what some of these words are. Incidentally, this wasn't the actual photo of the therapist, but she doesn't look friendly. That's correct. I didn't want to use like an actual photo of the therapist just in case they were here. I didn't want to call them out for having a profile that didn't work so well. But it's super technical. It is very distant. And it does say I a lot. Like folks' clients. It feels very jargony. Absolutely. These are great. Let's look at another set of examples real quick, and then we'll kind of go into some more lessons that we learned. So here's another one. Again, 60% conversion. Majority of people see this one and they say, yes, I want to work with this therapist. With me, therapy won't feel so intimidating. I specialize in working with people who need help managing their anxiety and finding ways to build back their confidence. We'll take a problem solving approach to find what works in managing your stressors and give you back control. And through our work, you'll learn more about yourself, figure out the changes you want, and make a plan to get there. A lot of my clients come in not knowing what to expect. Some are nervous about opening up about themselves. And in my practice, we go at a steady pace while respecting your boundaries. Any thoughts about this one? About Bashi says the A plus. What's A plus about it? Collaborative language. Through our work, we will, ours, we's. Yes, absolutely. It's empowering, transparent, empathetic, talks to the client, normalizes a lot. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think that normalizing is really important. Yes, we'll get these slides. I think it's being recorded, and we're happy to provide you with the slides as well. Mason and I can follow up about that. That's right. So let's look at one more example of a profile that doesn't work so well. I'll help you explore what brought you to therapy in a warm, non-judgmental environment. My approach blends compassion with evidence-based tools, creating a space where you feel supported, seen, and empowered in your journey. I work with clients experiencing anxiety, life transitions, depression, grief, and self-esteem issues. I offer therapy to adults, and I'm truly honored to walk alongside each of my clients in their unique mental health journeys. This, again, is a profile that people saw and nobody really wanted to reach out to. What do you see in this one? A little bit generic. Yep. We would hope that all therapy happens in a warm, non-judgmental environment. It's very jargony, chat GPT. As much as we love evidence-based tools, it's not such great language for clients. It feels like it can apply to most clinicians. Yes. And I think that that's like the chat GPT aspect of it. It just feels kind of generic, right? It's kind of a sales pitch. Yeah. Also, the lists. I want to name the list in this one: the anxiety, life transitions, depression, grief, self esteem issues, life transitions. Like a great therapist love to talk about life transitions in their profiles, but like I've never heard any of my friends being like, I'm going through a life transition right now. We talk about something else in our life. Wonderful. Y'all are on it. You've got some great observations here. It's going to be a great workshop. I can already tell. Let's talk a little bit about therapy seekers, and this is really important. It's always a great exercise when you're about to write a website or your profile to remember to ground yourself in what people looking for therapy might be feeling. So, just to start off with, we've got a quick poll here. I'm curious for folks' thoughts on this one. What percent of people looking for therapy are actually using their phone? They're on their phone. They're not on a computer. They're on their phone. I'm curious what people think. So we're going to launch this poll here. Do we think it's 15%, 35%, 55%, or 75%? All right. Lots of folks coming in. A lot of people think 75%. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually a little bit less, so 55%. So it's a little bit over half are looking on their phone. Um, and one of the things that we found sometimes when we talk to people is that they're on their phone because they're in a communal space. They're at work, they're at their house, they don't want other people to see their screen. So they are on their phones. But it's a little bit over half. Some great guesses. And so let's share those results back so people can see how people saw it. So most people thought over 75%, which is probably it is increasing. We do see that a lot. And folks are hunched over their phone. And so when you're hunched over your phone, what is it like? We all know the feeling when we're scrolling through stuff. What does that feel like? You've got uh quick reactions, right? You're not really reading things. You're just kind of more emotionally driven. It's draining. You're already a little bit exhausted. Yeah, yeah. You're really quick to bounce, right? If something doesn't grab your attention immediately, you're out to the next one. You need that like immediate connection, right? And I think that's something about the profiles that we saw that worked really well. Is that first sentence really grabbed people in. With me, therapy won't feel so intimidating. It's like, oh, you got me. I'm here. So when we talk to people looking for therapy, most of the time they're feeling these three things. They're overwhelmed because they are looking for therapy. So something is happening in their life that has made them realize they need a change. And they're going to look for therapy, which can be an overwhelming process. They're really uncertain. For most people, this could be a new experience. They don't know what to expect. Um, they don't know what to expect in their life. They don't know what they're going to talk about. And they're lonely. This is a major one. I mean, I think a lot of people today feel lonely, and it's a big driver of people looking for therapy. When we see loneliness as one of the most searched for terms on Mental Health Match, that people are looking for connection, they feel isolated, and so when I think about it. This is one of the things that I think is interesting about this is that the skills that you have as a therapist in the room are the same skills that are going to come to use to write a really good profile. So what you think about if you've got somebody in the therapy space with you who's overwhelmed, uncertain, feeling lonely, what would you do to kind of meet them where they're at? And so the question that I want to put in the chat is similar. How can your online profile then meet somebody where they're at if they're feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, and lonely? What do you think? Date it, normalize it, give them hope. Tell them they feel, help them feel seen, right? Reassure them. This is absolutely normalize and empower them. This is great. Yeah, y'all are on it. This is exactly what profiles need to do, right? Um, Remind them that they're not alone, give them a reason to believe, provide support, help them feel seen. That's exactly what needs to be done. And that is let's dig into this together. I mean, what a great way to start a profile too, right? Like let's get into this together. So all of these are spot on. And it's hard because a lot of times we go into writing our website or profiles and we forget to ground ourselves in what the reader is going to be feeling. And so we start thinking about the stuff that's important to us. And we remember that we have this certificate and we've done this and these are our expertise and we've got this kind of modality that we worked really hard to get trained in. And that's not what people need to at that moment. They need to feel that hope, that connection. Um, they need to feel seen. So reflected, connected, seen. That's exactly right. Great job. So in the next few minutes, we'll talk about some do's and don'ts. Some of these y'all have already named, so we're already there. We'll give you a little bit more detail on it. Again, feel free to ask questions as we go. We can use the Q&A feature. Also looking at the chat. But let's talk about some of the lessons that we've learned. The first one is to invite clients into the conversation. So we saw that, right? Somebody named, a few people named the profiles that worked really well used words like together, us, ours. The ones that didn't work so well, they're a lot of I statement. Um, so that's exactly right. You want to tell the story of us. This is kind of like just a different type of story. We often get caught telling the story of me, or we tell the story of you, but in the story of a profile, we really want to focus on the story of us. Like, what are we going to do together? How are we going to make progress together? We want to break through that loneliness. And so it's really important that we invite those people in. Um, and you can tell your story, you can talk about you can talk about them, but you got to weave it together with the story of us. Um, Robin asks a question, and it's, Robin says it came in the Q&A. Inappropriate to start a profile with, comma. So you've been through some shit. If I can say that. And I think it's maybe a question of is it inappropriate to start a profile with? And I will tell you, I wouldn't start that way because of a do and don't that we're about to get to. But you can absolutely curse if it fits your niche. So I will never forget um, a research session that we did with somebody, and they were looking through therapist profiles and they just zeroed in on this therapist. They had purple hair, and their first sentence was, people describe me as a no bullshit therapist. And no matter what, like they were looking for insurance, they said that was important to them. This therapist was private pay. They just kept coming back and they're like, I want that therapist. Because it really spoke to them. And the reality is that therapists worked with a client base that was a little bit edgy, and they were really attracted to that purple hair and to the cursing. And so, but if your niche is CEOs and business folks, if your niche is teachers or folks, I don't know, if your niche doesn't curse, don't curse. So yeah, and Chip says my market is men, so language is real and uncensored. Authenticity is where it's at. Great. So let's just look. I'm going to do a quick exercise in the chat, knowing that the goal is to really talk about the story of you, to weave together, to invite the client in. How would you rewrite these I statements? So if you wanted to say, I'm a compassionate listener who provides a safe space with an integrative approach, and I incorporate mind body techniques to help clients gain confidence in the ability to navigate strong emotions, I aim to be a resource and a guide for clients. This was our example that didn't work so well. How would you rewrite that to bring the client in to tell the story of what we can make possible together? Scrap it completely. Start over. Yep, I'm probably pretty good. But if you've got that on your Word document in front of you and you want to do something with it, what are some ways that you would do that? how can we use the word we or together or ours? We all we all need a safe space. I love that, Tracy. That's so, yes. Start by saying together, right? So together will help you gain confidence in the ability to navigate strong emotions. That's right, because it is a together process, right? Your story is important to me. Yes. We'll be together in our safe space. Like these are great. Amazing. Ashley ask a quick question that I'll answer real quick, which is uh, when you write a bio on your website and you want to talk about yourself, would you recommend that you say that from a first person or a third person? So would you say I have experience in or Ashley has experience in? And I would absolutely do it with the I. Um, you definitely want to, you're a human. And I think you're trying to create a connection with somebody. So definitely I would say I rather than a third person. I have a plan for you. Yeah, yeah. Okay, these are great. Or collaboratively. It's a little bit of it's a hard word. It's like a little bit jargony. I think together or you and I, it's a little bit easier to read. But collaboratively also it works. It's got the right idea. Okay. I can't talk about creating connection without talking about a photo. So I just want to let's name it real quick. Your photo is really, really important, especially on mobile. It takes up a lot of real estate on profiles. So you want to have a photo that invites connection. We have a whole guide to photos. Um, if you want to screenshot this, bit.ly/MHM photo, get our free guide. But there are some things that make photos really great and things that really hurt in a profile photo. And I'll say at the outset to this that it is not the professionalism or the quality or any of that. Like you don't need a fancy photo. You just need a photo that invites connection. So for a second poll, I'm curious to hear from you. Which of these three, so three of these photos performed really well, three of these photos did not go so well. Let me ask this poll. Give me 1 second to launch it. Um, so one, two, three, four, five, six. Which of the three that performed best? Ooh, lots of options. Amazing. Okay, wow, the results changed. Okay. Any final votes? All right, let's share those results out. So folks think photo number one, absolutely, that got the most votes. That did perform the best. Photo two did not perform well. That got the second most votes. Photo three also did not perform well. Photo four did, and photo six did. And we're going to talk about it. So one, four, and six were really, really great performers. And then two, three, five, not so much. So we're going to kind of talk about that, share the results of what people thought. I can see people in the chat saying things. Absolutely. Number five looks like he's scolding me for not being good enough. That's exactly right. It feels very, very judgmental. One is very welcoming. Let's go through some do's and don'ts, and then we can kind of see why these photos worked or didn't work. So, um, when we look at photos, the focus should be on the eye contact. This is all about connection. You want to have somebody see it and feel a connection with you. So if there's too much glare or you can't see your eyes, that's like the biggest rule that you don't want to do. You really want to make sure people can see your eyes. Dress to match your niche. If you work with like angsty teenagers, maybe you don't need to be in a suit and tie or something fancy. Likewise, if you work with business professionals, don't be in like the edgy punk outfit. Natural lighting is where it's at. You don't want to be like overly sterile. You're all about that connection. And it's important not to have a distracting background. So many times we see profile photos. It's a great photo of somebody, but they're out in Times Square. They're like out in the middle of a bunch of signs, or there's people or cars behind them. We don't want to do that. And we don't want model shots, right? Like this is not a dating app. So when we look at some of them, they're like, oh, you look like a little sultry, like a little, like just like a too modelly, that it feels to the point of overwhelming. So when we look at our photos, um, number one, warm lighting, eye contact, perfect. Number two is there's too much glare. You can't see their eyes at all. It's too zoomed out, and there's just like glare across their face. So there, you can't actually make that connection with them. Number three is the model shot. It's a little too sultry. Number four, it's great. We got a natural background. We got eye contact. Five is that judgmental look. It's like that doesn't feel good. And number six, this is incidentally how it was cropped. It's like not a good crop. They should definitely like have their whole face in the photo, but it didn't matter. The eye contact is there. It's warmth. They look professional. It's been really, really great. Um, Robin's asking pros and cons of your photo of including like a service dog or a pride flag. And yes, Robin, you're right. I will say it's dependent on your client base. If you work with queer folks or you work with trans folks, like, yes, put a signifier and it'll help you stand out immediately. And um, service dogs, it's interesting. It definitely depends on your niche. Uh, we've seen profiles do really, really well with somebody with the service dog in them. It makes you feel really relatable. We've also seen photos with like 4 or 5 dogs in them, and those don't do so well. Um, how old the photo is too old? I don't know. I think that's if somebody is going to feel like you've lied to them or misrepresented yourself, that's that. Otherwise, I think it's fine. Greg is sharing best results I ever got was a pick with me and my dog. Absolutely. It makes you feel relatable. But again, it depends on your client base. Um, Let me go through a few more. I've seen some questions here. We'll get to them in a second. So the third thing I want to talk about is creating hope, which we have talked about in the examples. um, so when we talk about creating hope, it's we really focus on the solutions here. People are already overwhelmed with their issues. They know they have been through some things, and so we really want to help them focus on the solution. So we want to use a lot of verbs about what that means. Verbs like hope, ease, soothe, calm, connect, balance, thrive. Like these are all outcomes related. These are all what we want in life. We're going to therapy because we want to ease, soothe, calm, connect, balance. So we really want to focus on those words. Don't dwell too much on the problem, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a second. And don't over explain the process. If you offer EMDR, like let's talk about that. If you've got a specific approach that's important, let's talk about it. There's ways to talk about it, but it's people are really there for the outcome. That's what sells. We have um, there's like they already have their doom and gloom. They don't need that. It's really about what they want to see. They need that hope, right? That's why they're there for. So I'm curious in the chat to hear from you. What are some hope words that you use to describe what you make possible for clients? Or like what are some things that you make possible? How would you describe the outcomes of what you do? Balance, connected, aligned. I like aligned. Accept. Accept is a good one. Well-being. Bringing joy back. Love that one. Fulfilled, centered, empowered, content. That's a great one. Joy keeps coming up. I like that. You're most functional. Learning to heal. These are great, right? And these are what is going to get somebody to come to therapy because when people are looking for therapy, they're not just like looking for a therapist, they're actually deciding if they're going to go to therapy or not. And we see this a lot where it's like something happens on Wednesday and they're looking for a therapist Wednesday night, but they wake up Thursday and they're like, I don't know if I need to do that, right? And so the hope is what sells them on the process. And that's what creates that desire when they wake up Thursday to be like, I want that. I want to bring joy back. I want to feel free. I want to live a happier life. Absolutely.
Ryan Shannon had a really relevant question at the end of the Q&A about the search process and if it's through hopeful words or
Mm.
the issue they're experiencing.
Typically, on most sites, they are actually searching by the issue that they're experiencing, which is how they're matched. Especially on mental health match, right? We match on presenting issues. We do include a lot of like hopeful things in our survey, our client survey, so that therapists get a sense of who they are. They, words like loved or appreciated or fulfilled. Those are really important. It's for a therapist to know. But I think in most places, we're matching on presenting issues, which tend to be kind of the problem statements. Thanks for naming that. Deborah asks, what if you only work with kids? You are selling to their parents for the most part, unless they're like late kind of teenager years. But for the most part, if they're adolescents, like you should be speaking more to their parents than to the kids themselves. Great. Okay, a couple more, and then I'm going to get there's some questions lined up here. I'm going to get to them. Um, the next one is an important one, and we're gonna talk about some of these things. So, use the word "you" to create hope, but not overwhelm. So this one was really interesting when we looked at profiles and pulled out words from the best profiles use the word, and the worst profiles use the word "you," but they use them in different contexts. So, um, the profiles that worked really well use the word you to kind of talk about solutions. They've done things that we've named already in this conversation, right? I want to help you bring joy back. Together, we'll bring you joy back. They use the word you to really focus on the outcome. Um, those that don't work so well use the word you to kind of reinforce the problem. And if you remember the state that people are in, they're overwhelmed. And so when we say things like, do you have a problem? Are things out of control? Are you angry? It just reinforces that overwhelm, which can get them a little bit dysregulated, right? They can put their phone down, they can shut it off, they can switch to the next one. They might not be in a state where they can kind of say, like, oh, I feel dysregulated, but it's not the profile, it's not the therapist, it's my reaction to that because they haven't been to therapy yet. Um, they get dysregulated and they just like bristle at it. So we don't want to just remind the word you. We don't want to like reactivate them. We don't want to reinforce like shame or guilt. We want to express you in the positive change. So, focus on what you need to be happy, relieve the pressure you feel, be proud of who you are. These are all really great uses of the word you. And so somebody earlier was asking, like, can I start my profile with, well, you've been through some shit. And like you can, but it might backfire a little bit because it might just reinforce depending on what that shit is. If you're reminding of them in a way that makes them get a little dysregulated and kind of not be in a place where they want to move forward. It's an emotional process looking for therapy, but in the end, it's kind of the rational brain that's needed to sit and say, like, I'm going to book an appointment, I'm going to show up to that consult, I'm going to do all of these things. And so we need to make sure that we're not overwhelming people with the way we talk about what they've been through, the way we're reminding them of those things. Robin does say a personal pet peeve from a trauma informed perspective. The therapist who say you will feel safe or I create a safe space does they say it makes me throw up in my mouth a bit, and I hear that, right? You can't guarantee safety, and while we all strive to create a safe space, we also can't guarantee that for people too. So thank you, Robin, for naming that. Evelyn's asking in the hook statement, the very first sentence, should it be about you and hope, or should it be about the problem or statement? Um, I think it could be either. You can do both. I see a lot of profile like the profile that started with like therapy will feel less intimidating together. Like that sounds like a really great introduction. If you've got a really strong niche, like you know, I work with people who feel overwhelmed and unappreciated. That could be a really good one. I think it depends about the like if you work with higher acuity clients, if you work with folks with trauma, starting the first sentence and reminding them of that is probably going to be too dysregulating. So I would focus on the solutions. Okay. I'm just going to skip ahead. We're going to go to one more. Use everyday language that people can sense. So this is true. We named it a lot in the examples. Like there was uh, a lot of clinical jargon, but jargon is more than that. So um, abstract concepts that are like hard to think about, that's also jargon. It might not be clinical jargon. It just might be something that feels like a little bit complicated or abstract, right? And so like that's when I was thinking of that word like collaborating. It, if we could just say like together, that's something that's tangible. I know what together feels like. Collaborating is like a little bit more jargony. And so we want to move away from both the clinical jargon and just like the things that are hard to think about where you have to take a second. I always think about, can you feel it? Can you sense it? Can you experience it? Like, is it tangible? Those are the words that we want to use. And I'd always suggest you run your profile or your website by somebody who's not a clinician. So, like some great examples I've seen from profiles are, if you're going to name a modality, like name it, but also explain it. So, I've seen a profile say something like, together we may use a process called EMDR, which can help retrain your body's response to traumatic memories. It doesn't just leave it at the EMDR, it doesn't use the full you know the full description of EMDR, the full language. It uses the acronym because it's a lot simpler, but it really explains what that is in a very tangible way, retraining your body's response to traumatic memories. I get what that means. So I'm curious in the chat, I want to do a little workshop. How would you replace the word solutions oriented in your profile if you wanted to make it more tangible? How would you describe solutions oriented? Practical strategies? Yep. Focus on solutions together, using that togetherness. I like that. The favorite one that I've seen on a profile is, oh, what works and what doesn't work. I like that too. What to expect. These are all great examples. Favorite one I've seen on a profile, will focus on small, doable steps that make life better. Like, how approachable is that? I know exactly what that is. I can feel it. Ooh, a small, doable step. Like, that's a win. Um, Lastly, I'm going to actually ask, is there any word in your profile that you want to workshop replacing? Is there like a jargon word that you see, something that you want to try to change, get the collective wisdom in the room? Data driven. Okay. How would folks, and this is kind of like evidence based strategies or psychodynamic, how would folks describe data driven? What we know works, right? Proven, uh, things we know have worked for other people. Suzanne says nobody cares. Nobody cares about evidence driven. Well, I mean, it's all about the way we describe it, right? I think a lot of people want things that we know work for other people. Um, great. We have information about what works and what doesn't. That's great. Researched. I like it. I like it. Great. We'll move on, but let's hold these couple other examples and we'll come back to them in the workshop time. The final do and don'ts that we want to share, and I know I got a question about this, is having a niche. This is super important. It's okay if you don't have a niche yet. You can change your niche. We're not asking you to set it in stone, but it's really important that people feel reflected in your profile. And to do that, you need to say something specific to their needs. That specific population that you speak to, it could be a presenting issue, it could be a feeling, it could be demographic, it could be lots of things, right? Remember that example that we talked about in the beginning, the go-to person in their family, but they're left wondering what makes them happy. That's a niche. And it speaks to somebody specifically. The problem where we see is when we try to speak to everybody and we make these lists. So, like, I see clients ages 8 to 80. Like, I don't feel reflected in that. I'm in between that age range, but I don't feel reflected in that. I don't think that's the therapist for me. Nobody would, right? Or we see these like long lists of like, I see clients with the anxiety, depression, family issues, blah, 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 blah. And then I just feel like I'm a part of a list and I don't know if I'm really reflected in that or not. So, really trying to be specific. You can always change it. It is a little bit of a Goldilocks thing. Like, you want to speak to somebody specifically, but like you don't want to be so specific, right? Like, I work with moms ages 35 to 36 who have a full-time job and like 8 kids. Like, that's like too specific. You're just not going to find that type of client everywhere. But like I work with new parents who feel overwhelmed. That's a niche, and everyone can feel reflected in that. So it is really important to have that. Um, we do have a question in here. What do you do if your current passion or niche is working on emotional regulation and relationship issues, which comes across as generic? I would say like the way you write about that is not generic, right? Like I work with clients who are tired of arguing with their partner. I work with clients who get overwhelmed, in their relationships or with conflict in their relationships. My clients together, we're going to help create healthier relationship patterns, ways for conflict to turn into improvements, ways to feel more grounded or more balanced. I think you can all talk about those things in a way that doesn't feel super generic, that really does speak to people who want to work on emotional regulation and relationship issues. Um, they also ask, what do you do if you don't have a niche yet? And I think that that's like, you just got to put down something and you can change it. You can come back and change your profile anytime, but it is important, I think, that you try to speak to somebody specific. Turn conflict into conversation. That's really, really great. Um, Somebody else is asking, I'm testing the phrase or tagline, you don't have to be pro Jesus, just anti chaos, because my counseling is based from a church location. Does that sound inviting to those with no faith story? I'm curious what folks in the chat think. My initial reaction is like it's a little too on the nose, a little too specific. It doesn't sound so inviting. I actually think the location of where your practice is like not so important at the beginning. Like you really just want to make a connection to them. You can say things like, my office is based out of a church, but that's not there. I don't, I see I see all sorts of people. I don't, my clients come from different faiths. I don't have a faith. You can talk about that, but I would actually say like you could save that for like way down on the website, way down on the profile. I don't think the office location is the first thing that people are going to see. You could talk about spirituality. Um, yeah, I think, and like, I think this even the phrase pro Jesus is like, I think it's a little dysregulating for a lot of people who might have experience with that. Either way, even to say like you don't have to be pro Jesus if somebody is religious, like that doesn't really land with them. And if somebody's been hurt by religion, then that also doesn't really resonate. So kind of my thought is I wouldn't go that route. I would kind of more focus on you and what you make possible for people rather than the location of your practice at first. People, you probably stands out more to you, I think, than most people. Being inclusive. Yeah. Okay, great. So we're going to do a little bit of workshop time. We're going to keep going on workshopping some things. So we're going to come back to some of those words that people wanted to workshop. Um, I want to take us to a process of writing a profile. I think anytime you write marketing messaging, whether it's your bio, it's a profile, it's a website, start with a specific client in your head. Like ground yourself in that client. Imagine somebody specific. So I want to just take a moment now, think about a client you've had who was a really good fit, who you really helped. They made a lot of progress. You would wish you had more of those clients. Take a few minutes to kind of write some of these things out. What did you help them do? Why were you a good fit for them? How would they describe you? If you could go back into your first conversation, what would you want to say to them about what they're going to do and make progress with you? So just take a minute, think about that specific client. Anybody want to share one of the ways they completed the prompt? How would you say that you helped that client blank? Obviously, no personal details, please. Get more comfortable having feelings. Wow, that's like a huge one. Um, Help them reduce anxiety. Yeah. I was a good fit because I was comfortable. They would describe me as down to earth, break free from beliefs formed in childhood that were holding them back. Love that one. That's huge. I mean, I think a lot of us could see ourselves in that. Recognize the abuse in her life and uncover unhealthy patterns, make sense of herself, help them feel seen and heard, accept. Yeah, these are great. These are really, really, really great. They knew they weren't alone, feel at home, feel they are their own home. I like that one. Yeah, it was a good fit to understand their field. They work with people with trauma and substance abuse, feel validated, see themselves as imperfect, and know that that's okay. Yeah, these are great. Really, really, really great, everybody. I love the language that y'all are suggesting. I think it really resonates with people. It helps people feel seen. And I'm curious, like, to go back to some of those words that were thrown out earlier, who would be a good fit for somebody using a psychodynamic approach? How would you tell them that you're a good fit for them? Like, how would you describe like who that approach is for, what you make possible with a psychodynamic approach? Look back to move forward. Yeah. Understand, like, yeah, processing past experiences, understanding themselves better, learning what's underneath the surface. It's not one thing, it's your mother. Yeah, to gain clarity. It's a good one. Um, yeah, going through what we go through, I think, yeah, understanding like the patterns that have been being or being making visible the invisible to folks. Um, kind of uh, taking a look at how we run on autopilot, right? Like some of those things might be really helpful. When I talk to other startup founders or business owners, I always like to talk about like our mental operating system, which works really well for like techie folks, and the ways that we have an operating system and we never really think about it. And if we don't take it out and look at it, it's we run on like the DOS version of ourselves. Great. So once you've grounded yourself in the client, you've kind of played around with some language, you're actually speaking to them. Consider some prompts. These are the prompts on a mental health match profile that we use. So you don't just have like a blank space. We found that these are things that clients really resonate with and want to know. And I find that they're really helpful in creating like a just starting to write copy in a paragraphs about yourself. So I specialize in working with people who blank. Together we will. I'm a good fit for people who want to blank. My clients describe me as. And then once you start to like kind of write this out, you've got some paragraphs that you can start to put together. Think about that opening hook if you're going to say like, you know, what therapy is like with you or types of clients. I work best with people who feel like they're the go-to in their family but don't know what makes them happy. That's a really great. So kind of just try to play around. I'm curious if anyone wants to workshop anything, put it out in the open. We've got a last few minute thoughts to go, but I want to take a couple minutes just to say, like, have some workshop time. Anybody want to share a sentence that they've got that they're putting together? Um, Somebody asked me, do I recommend Psychology Today or another platform? I'm not really getting enough to make Psychology Today worth it. They are we are a different directory. I personally um, I think Psychology Today is not doing enough to keep up with the times. I think they rely on Google searches, which are declining. And I think they can work when you've got, like 500 other people in your state and you're just kind of a sea of profiles. But, as we get SitePack more developed and the counseling compact comes online and the social worker compact comes online, all of a sudden there's going to be 10,000 people who are seeing clients in your state. 20,000. And I don't know how Psychology Today is going to do it, but that's okay. I have a bias on that one. My opening, Tracy says it's not easy to make a decision about needing some clarity and support. No one receives a playbook on life. I actually love that as the opener. No one received a playbook on life. Like, yes, um, that's right. Most of us look good on the outside, but I really love that line. No one received a playbook on life, and sometimes it's not easy to make a decision to decide to seek additional support. Greg, let's Jill's workshopping through a collaborative and evidence-based approach. I tailor therapy to the needs of my clients. I would say that's a good no. I would rephrase that in ways about what you make possible for people, the specific people that you work with. My boss wrote that from Jill. Yep, I that is your boss. Your AI could have also written that, so I would scrap that completely and start fresh with like speak to that client. And I guarantee you, if you imagine a client, you would not tell them that you're going to tailor therapy to the unique needs of my clients. You're going to think about that specific person and their needs. Difficult roads can lead to beautiful destinations. It does feel a little bit distant. I would add the word you in there or together. Together, we'll turn a difficult road into a beautiful destination. I think that that's a really, really, really great one. Um, so real quick, Tiffany's got this question, and I'm going to finish up the last few minutes with some questions. Do you recommend we use AI at all? And I think yes, AI can play a role. AI can help you identify jargon. You can ask it for some jargon statements. You can suggest synonyms. You can say, hey, how would you rephrase EMDR? You can ask AI to make some sentences easier to read, a little bit more simpler. What are some other words for collaborating? What AI can't do is help you stand out, seem authentic or original. It will regenerate the stuff that everybody else wrote. What AI cannot do is help you come up with a niche that needs to come from your heart about the people that you work with. And what AI cannot do is create a first draft of anything because it's going to be generic slop. It's going to sound like AI wrote it, just like somebody said, Jill, that your boss sounded like that they used AI. So I would say like it's always great. Like take what you've written and say like, how would you say this word differently? Is there any jargon in here that you think clients won't understand? Um, how would you rewrite these sentences? And then I would look at what AI says, and I would maybe take in their advice or not take its advice. But there is a role to help you refine things, but it's not the starting point. And I think too many times we see that as the starting point, and then you can really tell. Um, great, great. I love that Brian says, somebody said Brian untangled the story a little bit, working with people and leaders who want to discover the underlying reasons for harmful thinking patterns, untangle their story, strengthen key relationships, and walk in greater emotional mental freedom. I think it's a really great start, and I would just make it a little bit clearer, a little bit more resonant. People um, who like together we can identify some of your patterns that hold you back and help you get a clear sense of who you are and where you're going. That could be like a really good one. Good workshopping. One more question we've got. I've always wondered if clients are resistant to the question, how did you make that feel? Centering emotions in the bio or resistance to the question, does this remind you of something in your childhood? Do the questions feel too cliche? I cannot answer that from a in the room clinical perspective, but I can tell you that I think it feels too common to have. It's not going to make you stand out in a bio. If you're like, we're going to talk about how you feel in your childhood, I think any therapist could write that. And so I would come up with something a little bit more focused on your clients. And then finally, Chip has two questions about Mental Health Match. Here's the code again, 60 days free, 20% off for your first 6 months afterwards. Chip says, I've never heard of Mental Health Match. So how do you get in front of potential clients? And how do you market against like the BetterHelps and their Sonderminds and those types of folks? So we do a lot of different things. We have really, as you can tell from this deck, we have really standout visual ads, really, and so we do a lot of paid work on Google and Meta and like those things. We have a great social account to follow. We do a lot of community events, so we get a lot of word of mouth. We've been running free community events for both the therapist community, but also for our clients. We have therapists who put on workshops and different things that bring people together and kind of like psychoeducational environments, but they get to connect a little bit and hear from each other. We have a lot of partners, so we work like Mental Health America refers a lot of people to us. So there's a lot of different ways that we're out in front of people. It's always free for clients to use. You can use it anonymously. We just want people to be able to get help. But Paul's question, we are not in Canada. We are only in the States. So thank you so much, everybody. I see a few last questions, but I think we're wrapping up. Um, Mason has a great call that this conversation can continue in Blueprint's digital community. I really appreciate the energy that you all came with and all of your great ideas. I can tell we've got an incredible group of therapists in the room. It's been an honor to be with you this hour.
Thank you, Ryan. That was magic. Very much appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. And the slides and the recording will be accessible in the community. We will email everybody who registered for the event in just a few minutes. So expect that in your inbox and look out for future webinars. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks all. Take care.